Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask you to prepare for the beginning. We'll start in 3-4 minutes. Thank you very much. I'd also like to ask, if possible, to sit closer to the podium as much as possible and as much as it is free, obviously. Thank you.
Dear participants, the plenary session is about to begin. Please take your seats.
Құрметті ханымдар мен мырзалар, пленарлық отырыс басталуда. Орындарыңызға орналасуларыңызды сұраймыз.
Уважаемые участники, пленарное заседание скоро начнется. Пожалуйста, займите свои места. Ladies and gentlemen, you are kindly requested to switch your mobile devices to silent mode and take your seats in the hall. The plenary session will begin in a few minutes. Thank you for your attention.
Құрметті ханымдар мен мырзалар, мобильді құрылғыларыңызды дыбыссыз режимге ауыстырып, залдағы өз орындарыңызға жайғасуды сұраймыз. Пленарлық сессияның отырысы бірнеше минуттан кейін басталады. Назарларыңызға рахмет.
Уважаемые дамы и господа, просим вас перевести мобильные устройства в беззвучный режим, а также занять свои места в зале. Заседание пленарной сессии начнется через несколько минут. Благодарим за внимание.
Kayarlı kun dostlar. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to this important high-level session on water security as a key investment for Central Asia's sustainable future, hosted by the Food and Agriculture Organization as part of the Astana International Forum 2025. A forum that lives up to its mission of connecting minds, shaping the future. My name is Viorel Gutsu. I am FAO Assistant Director General, Regional Representative for Europe and Central Asia, and I have the honor to moderate this session. I would like to start by inviting our distinguished participants for the opening remarks. And for the first opening remarks, I'd like to invite His Excellency Dr. Chui Dunyui, Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization. Director General, the floor is yours.
Assalamu alaikum. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear Prime Minister of Tajikistan, I'm so pleased to welcome you to the FAO panel session together with the host country here and on water security as a key investment for Central Asia's sustainable future. Water security is at the core of our shared ambitions to connect the minds and shape a sustainable, reliable, peaceful, prosperous future. FAO 2025, we consider it's a special year significance as we mark the 80th anniversary of FAO, 80 decades of collective action towards peace, rural development, and food security. Water security is a fundamental prerequisite for food security. During the World War II, that time more than 95% people suffered from hunger. But now, still, we have a long way to go to finish the last 10%. Especially some countries, in vulnerable countries, conflict regions, they didn't have basic food. I mean, carbohydrates, basic level of food security. And here, you are lucky. Kazakhstan, you have a band of land, you have a band of food, and maybe you have a little bit of problem with obesity. It's also not good. Life started with water. I'm a geneticist. Actually, human being originated from water. Our ancestors from sea as a fish, and then become territorial animals, and then become intelligent animals. Water is food. It is food. Water is life. It is energy. It is dignity, and it is opportunity. But water is not a gift from the God. We should make water valuable, pricing, and be used efficient, effective for sustainable way. Without the water security, there is no health, no development. But water security requires a targeted investment at the scale and with a holistic design. Around the river basin, around the mountains, here we talk about Tian Shan Mountains and Pamir Mountains. So at least we have some holistic design. Water is no boundary. You saw the boundary because you see the river, but you didn't see the boundary because the water is in the air. Yeah? They have the global circulation of the water. In Central Asia, water is a shared resource. As I said, it's shared from one mountain's glaciers or several rivers together. One that flow across the borders, connect the nations and the communities, and also keep the connection of the civilizations. in this arid, semi-arid region where the agriculture is the largest consumers of water, don't blame agriculture. That's our ancestors found is the best way to keep sustainable. Because water for agriculture, but not only for agriculture, because also for the forestry. I said agriculture is agriculture at large, including forestry, animal husbandry, and others, aquaculture, you name it. So I think the rivers cross the national boundaries. Water is not only a shared challenge, it's a shared destiny and responsibility. The region faces the convergence of climate extremes, growing water demand, and degrading infrastructure. In Central Asia, flood and drought are growing more frequent and severe. Like last year was the suspend of this forum because of the flooding. I was prepared to come, but finally I couldn't come because simply a flood stopped the so big, important forum. And the cost in lives, livestock, nearly $14 billion in damage every year. Without water, that's visible, that's accountable or measurable, 14 billion. But you didn't measure some social, economic, and environmental nexus comprehensive impact. Without water security, there is no resilience to climate shocks. As highlighted in the European and Central Asia Regional Overview of Food Security and Nutrition, 2024 water security is deeply uneven across the region. Many countries in Central Asia, including Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, are among the most affected, putting agricultural, rural livelihood, and economic stability at risk. But Central Asia is not just a region of the risk, it is a region of the opportunity. I always say that it's a one coin from the both sides. You have to look at holistic way and overall address the issues. To tap in the potential for the opportunity, we must first strengthen the regional collaboration, because we are living around the one river, or one river basin. Because the rivers do not stop at the borders, effectively equitable and forward-looking water governance must be built on trust, transparency, and shared benefits. Second, innovation is the key to success. Digital tools like the artificial intelligence can, not only that, it's talk about the AI, it's a fashionable word. Be honest, I was a scientist. We didn't use that AI too much before becoming fashionable. Actually, it's an ICT application. A lot of countries, a lot of society, even Europe, a lot of countries still have a 2G infrastructure. How can you say AI based on 2G? Even 4G here. I checked this hotel, it's only 4G. You didn't have 5G infrastructure. How can you talk about AI? AI application for agriculture and rural development, even in the city, like here. So we have a lot of things to do and to investigate. And we need also the third, we must invest wisely in water, such as through the climate resilient irrigation to unlock a more sustainable, inclusive future. This is where the international financial institutions are vital in designing investment framework that align local needs with regional stability, short-term action, and with long-term sustainability. So I strongly encourage the people, organizations, international financial institutions, you have money, but don't do wrong things. Because you invest, you misleading the politician. We need a holistic design around the river. So you build a bigger dam, how to use the dam water more recycling. For industry, for energy, renewable energy, and for aquaculture, for horticulture, for livestock, and of course for human being, for better life. Don't simply consider build one dam and you finish your engine, and you create a problem for all the rest relevant sectors. So let's work together, more professional way, science-based, data-based, evidence-based. At FAO, we are proud to support the countries to achieve the water security, especially through the FAO Investment Center. Also, I challenge my colleagues in Investment Center. Even you have a lot of experts, but you did understand what it means expert. That's also create a danger and the negative impact. We have to learn each other, driving the progress toward achieve the FAO vision of, it's endorsed by the 197 members, 4 country members. Strategy framework of FAO is we always aim in the 4 betters, not only one bet alone. Better production, better nutrition, better environment, better life, leaving no one behind. We are further turning this vision into a concrete reality through the impactful initiative like the FAO Hand-in-Hand initiative, which fosters the partnership to fast-track agri-food system transformation and inclusive rural development. That's why we organized the World Food Forum during pandemic 2020. And now this year comes the 5th edition. And hybrids, of course, last year was extremely successful. More than 10,000 participants in person in Rome headquarters, and 45,000 online, 1.7 billion click on internet world, in the digital world. So through the World Food Forum, especially FAO Hand-in-Hand Investment Forum, we are really have members that track the potential investors. And also we build a bridge for the potential investors to come to understand the professional, together with the members, ministers, not only Minister of Agriculture and Water, Minister of the Economy, Minister of Finance, Minister of Innovation, you name it. So now that forum become one of the most impactful, I should say, in the UN system. Support the rural development, not only support the agriculture. Rural areas in the world is another part of the world. Any country, look, there's a beautiful city, but if you drive out, if you look another world is a rural world. If you go out of the New York Central Park, cross the river, New Jersey is another world. So any country, from the poor, relatively poor, and mostly advanced country, we have 2 worlds. One is the rural world, one is the urban world. So please focus, any problem in the urban world come from rural world. Now you say you complain the agricultural waste water, but look back, before the industrialization, the water only for the agriculture. You created the problem and now you complain the farmers. Please have a farmer, have yourself. Of course, I'm pleased to highlight the launch of the new partnership program between Afghanistan and the FAO, Kazakhstan and the FAO on sustainable water resource management and irrigation, which was agreed upon when I met with His Excellency President of Kazakhstan in Rome last year. So now it's time to take action. This time I come here, also discuss with relevant colleagues, ministers. We want the action. I don't want to talk too much. You know, the talk is once is good, second is 0.5 good, three times 0.33 good. So when you talk more, you less the value by mathematics. So simple. I'm a very simple person. So, yeah. And let's work together to change the games which need from policy to the investment and to the market oriented, make water value and value added. So please develop the cash valued crops and products first, and then lead the potential how to make the water efficiency meanings to the local communities and farmers and the local development. Let's us not leaving anyone behind as we shift the better and more food, water secure future for all, for people, for planet, and for prosperity, and equally developed in the rural areas. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Director General. Life starts with water. Water is not a gift. Water security is prerequisite to food security and development. But also, let's work together, let's invest together. Thank you very much, Director General. And it's an honor for me to invite His Excellency Kanat Bozumbayev, Deputy Prime Minister of the Republic of Kazakhstan.
Director General of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, Dr. Tsui Dunyu, distinguished forum participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Republic of Kazakhstan, I would like to extend a warm welcome to all guests gathered here today. We sincerely appreciate for the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations for its active role in organizing this session. I am confident these efforts will give a strong impulse to achieving water security in the Central Asian region. Central Asia is now facing serious climate challenge. Climate change has disrupted river systems, bringing more frequent droughts, reduced water flows, intense rainfall, and dangerous floods. In response to these challenges, Kazakhstan is placing special focus on water issues. At the instruction of President Tokayev, we have established a dedicated Ministry of Water, Resources and Irrigation. Since its creation, we have launched wide-ranging reforms aimed at transforming our national water management system. Based on an analysis of the current situation and the best practice, Kazakhstan has adopted a new water code, along with strategic documents for the development of water resources management until 2030. Let me highlight key areas of our national water policy. First, modernization and development of water infrastructure. We have launched urgent measures, including the construction of 42 new reservoirs and the reconstruction of 30 existing ones. More than 14,000 kilometers of irrigation canals are being modernized. These efforts will expand the area of irrigated land, improve water supply for key sectors of the economy, and reduce the risk of water-related emergencies. Second, increasing the efficiency of the water use. Together with farmers, we are introducing water-saving technologies. To support this transition, we subsidy rate for the building irrigation systems and purchasing drip and sprinkler equipment has been raised to 80%. Third, improving information and analytical systems. We are developing a new digital platform, HydroGov KZ, which will serve as a unified water cadastre. It will include spatial data on water bodies, hydraulic structures, river basins, and other key infrastructure. Importantly, we plan to digitize more than 3,500 kilometers of canals and automate water accounting across irrigation systems. Fourth, strengthening the legal and regulatory framework. The new water code is based on 6 core principles. Recognition of water as an integral part of the environment and economic development. Protection and conservation of water resources. Integrated use of surface and groundwater. Implementation of water-saving technologies. Adaptation to the climate change. Public participation in water protection and use. Fifth, deepening international cooperation. Half of Kazakhstan's water resources come from transboundary rivers. Effective cooperation with our neighbors on shared water courses is vital for sustainable water management and the protection of aquatic ecosystems. We were first in Central Asia to accede to the Convention of the Protection and Use of Transboundary Water Courses and International Lakes. This step reflects our commitment to building a strong framework for cooperation on shared water resources. Together with our neighbors, we have made tangible progress in the joint use and protection of transboundary water. Intergovernmental agreements have been signed to regulate our relations. We exchange hydrological and hydrochemical data, coordinate water allocation regimes, and align our action in emergency situations. At the regional level, we place high importance on the work of the International Fund for Saving the Aral Sea. Kazakhstan has consistently fulfilled its obligation within the fund and will continue to contribute to the strengthening its role and capacity. Kazakhstan views water not only as a natural resource, but also as a powerful driver of cooperation, sustainable development, and regional stability. We believe that only by building mutual trust and constructive dialogue we can respond effectively to the climate change we face. In conclusion, I would like to thank all participants once again and wish us fruitful cooperation, production discussions, and real progress in overcome the challenge ahead. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister Bozumbayev. Thank you for highlighting the national key priorities, especially water, and also efficient cooperation, regional cooperation between countries, cross-border cooperation, and all the other aspects of the importance of water for Kazakhstan. And thank you very much again, Director General, and also Deputy Prime Minister, for your inspiring opening remarks and for reaffirming commitment of both Kazakhstan and FAO to advancing water security in the region. With this, I'd like to invite our distinguished panel members to the podium to join me here, and I'll start with inviting Mr. Mohamed Mansouri, Director of FAO Investment Center. Please, come on in. Mr. Kyriakos Kakouris, Vice President of the European Investment Bank. Ms. Wiebke Schlömer, Director of Turkey and Central Asia International Finance Corporation, IFC World Bank Group. And Mr. Hussein Özhan, Managing Director for Central Asia and Mongolia, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, EBRD. Thank you very much for joining me for this panel discussion. I'd like to start also with some remarks at the beginning, also in continuation of our opening. In this region where arid and semi-arid conditions dominate, where agriculture accounts for the majority of freshwater use, and where shared rivers cross national boundaries, water security is not just an environmental or technical issue. It is a political, economic, and human challenge. At stake is not only the future of agri-food systems, but also regional stability, public health, and the livelihoods of millions. The water crisis, if left unaddressed, will widen inequalities, deepen degradation, and strain the region's potential for cooperation. But the opportunities are just as great. With the right investments and the right partnerships, we can move from risk to resilience, from outdated infrastructure to smart solutions, from fragmented action to regional solidarity. FAO is proud to be at the forefront of this agenda, supporting governments, communities, and partners through our technical expertise and investment facilitations. Today's session brings together institutional leaders and financial experts to explore how we can better align public and private investments to unlock long-term scalable solutions, ones that serve both national interests and regional cooperation. And let us begin our panel session, and I'd like to invite for the keynote presentation my colleague, Mr. Mohamed Mansouri, to make the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, my dear DG. It's an honor to address you today on a topic that will define the future of Central Asia. Today, I will speak about why investing in water in a sustainable, stable future for Central Asia, and why these investments must be smart, cooperative, and urgently pursued. Central Asia's water, energy, and food systems are deeply intertwined. Agriculture is the backbone of rural economies and livelihoods, contributing up to a fifth of the GDP and a quarter of total employment in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, for example. Agriculture outputs and jobs rely on water. 90% of all freshwater withdrawals in the region are allocated to agriculture. At the same time, water generates a substantial proportion of the region's electricity through hydropower. In the water, energy, food nexus, problems in one sector quickly threaten the others. Water is essential for both food security and energy security across Central Asia. Yet today, water resources are under grave threat. Ineffective management, competition over water resources, rising demand from population growth, climate change, and accelerated glacier meltings are placing immense pressures on water resources. Aging infrastructure adds to the challenge. More than 50% of the region's dams and irrigation infrastructure was built before 1980, leading to system-wide inefficiencies and also safety risks. The region has some of the world's highest per capita water withdrawals and is among the lowest economic productivity per cubic meter, with substantial environmental impact. 40% of the water is lost before reaching the fields, undermining the productivity of water and causing waterlogging and soil salinization. This highlights the need for effective policies, including more regional cooperation, more and better investments, and modern technology, including digitalization. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, no discussion of Central Asia's water future is complete without going back to the history, reflecting on the demise of the Aral Sea. Over 90% of the volume of what once was a vast inland lake teeming with life, the fourth largest lake on Earth, has been lost. Today, it's referred to as the Aralkum Desert, spawning the dust storms that plague communities for hundreds of kilometers. This ecological catastrophe was not a natural disaster. It was a policy disaster. It stemmed from decades of unchecked, uncoordinated water withdrawals, primarily to fuel an expansion of irrigated agriculture without regard for the limits of the resource. CAREC, the regional organization, suggests that water mismanagement and lack of cooperation cost the region up to 4.5 billion per annum in missed economic opportunities. Future investments must not repeat those mistakes, but must lead to less water use overall through efficiency gains. And in other words, we need smarter water infrastructure, not just more water infrastructure. The critical message here is that sustainability, not just production, must be the yardstick for success in water investments. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, encouragingly, we are seeing new signs of great regional hydro cooperation in the region, like the roadmap to jointly construct the Kambar Ata 1 hydropower plant in Kyrgyzstan, agreed upon by Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan. Co-investing in this major infrastructure project is a recognition that shared benefits outweigh individual fears. We need more of these forward-looking partnerships. Central Asia states must strengthen and reinvigorate regional institutions, as the Deputy Prime Minister was suggesting, so that future attempts can be more effective than past ones. This means establishing drought contingency plans, rules for reservoir operation, compensating countries when they adjust operations in ways that help their neighbors. Cooperation is a win-win and attracts investments. For all studies have shown, and the economic gains are significant for countries. There are great premises, as shown by the statements of our political leaders this morning, but we need to do more to advance cooperation regionally and involving neighboring countries such as Afghanistan as they further develop their own water resources. Better data helps better asset management and operations. Incorporating seasonal forecasts into operational decisions at the Nurek Reservoir in Tajikistan, for example, has been shown to increase annual hydropower generation by 14%, while simultaneously eliminating all instances of reservoir overfill, a major step toward reducing flood risks. With today's technology, remote sensing, and digital platforms, there is no reason for data scarcity. Proper planning should look ahead decades, developing basin-wide strategies that factor in population growth, irrigation needs, hydropower expansion plans, and ecosystem requirements under various climate scenarios. Adopting a long-term view will help avoid short-sighted decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, achieving sustainable use of water resources will undoubtedly require more investments, both public and private, in infrastructure, yes, but also in institutions, technology, and people. Every dollar should bring multiple dollars worth of benefits in reduced water loss, increased productivity, and enhanced resilience. Prioritizing infrastructure and management modernization over mere rehabilitation yields much greater impacts, and soft investments in management, governance, innovations, and digital tools can dramatically improve income. Digital, data-driven water governance is transforming water management, improving efficiency, equity, and transparency. Smart IT solutions and remote sensing enable better decision-making, reduce disputes, and support more crop per drop and more value per crop. In other words, value for money, water use. Digitalization also helps with the thorny issue of water pricing. Digital systems are gradually replacing outdated and inefficient cash-based systems for irrigation service fees. Digital systems tend to offer a more secure, transparent, and organized method for payment, significantly enhancing cost recovery and therefore the ability of service providers and the private sector to invest more in irrigation improvements. We must also invest in resilient infrastructure design to cope with the worsening impacts of climate change, climate models projects that, if we do nothing, parts of Central Asia could see surface water availability decline by as much as 50% in 2050. Even as water demand may increase by over 50%, the volume of glacier is projected decrease by 11 to 19% by 2050. Moreover, extreme water events, droughts, and floods are becoming more frequent. New water infrastructure must be designed with the changing climate in mind. Irrigation norms at plot level, at farmer level, should be revised in light of changing water availability patterns, and more resilient crops, more resilient animals need to be grown. Investing upfront in climate-resilient designs can save enormous costs downstream. Integrated energy water planning I was referring to that. Let me also highlight the importance of investing in proactive real-time asset management for reducing long-term costs, extending the life of aging water infrastructure, and preventing failures. Finally, we need to address the human capital constraints. And the number of skilled water and energy specialists in Central Asia is declining, but worldwide it is declining. We today are training, less water engineers than in the past. Higher education institutions and the private sector need to join forces to develop skills, development programs, and make employment in the sector more attractive. According to government plans and strategies, by 2040, the total area coveted by modern technologies is expected to reach 10.6 million hectares. Uzbekistan will account for 40% of that area, and Kazakhstan for 25%. The demand for irrigation equipment methods will experience a significant long-term increase, which will require the creation of local production of drip irrigation sprinkler systems, and will also require a large number of specialists, and more importantly, to develop massively the capacities of farmers and end users downstream. Moving forward, water efficiency economies is an opportunity to create jobs and local know-how. Excellencies, water scarcity in Central Asia is a formidable challenge. But it is a challenge that is solvable, provided the countries in the region make the right investments and the right policy choices now. My message is one of urgent optimism. Adequate water management is a prerequisite for sustainable development in Central Asia. It underpins everything from food production, health, energy, and ecosystem. Investing in water is therefore investing in food security, economic growth, stability, and peace. At FAO, as my Director General was saying, we will step up support to our member countries and to the region to develop and implement strategic and smart investments, public and private, in better water management and water-saving technologies through our programs like the Kazakhstan FAO Partnership Program. As the Director of the FAO Investment Center, I can reiterate that we stand ready to work with investors, public and private, like our partner financial institutions, World Bank, IFAD, ADB, EIB, EBRD, Islamic Development Bank, GCF, JEF, and others, but also with the newcomers like NDB and AIIB. Some of them are present here. Many thanks for their participation. And all of that is really to help mobilize the sizable resources that are required to implement the transformation, but also with the local financial institutions, we need to crowd in more finance as the needs are massive. Let us act with this urgency and optimism that this issue demands, and let us commit to wise, smart, forward-looking investments that secure water, energy, and food for the coming generations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mansouri, and thank you very much for your insightful keynote, which has clearly articulated why water must be at the center of our investment agendas. And now let me invite you to open our panel discussion with three highly distinguished leaders from the world of finance and development. Together, they bring decades of experience in structuring investments that not only drive growth, but promote sustainability, equity, and resilience, all essential pillars for managing water in Central Asia. I'd like to start with Mr. Kyriakos Kakouris, Vice President of the European Investment Bank. Mr. Kakouris, the EIB plays a key role in climate finance and supporting green transitions. In the context of Central Asia, where agriculture is heavily impacted by climate change, how can your institution help scale up financing for climate-resilient agricultural practices, such as drought-resistant farming, water-saving technologies, or nature-based solutions? And how can we ensure that climate finance also supports smallholder farmers? Over to you.
Thank you very much. It is a great honor for me to to join this forum and in particular this session. I extend my gratitude to the organizers for bringing together such a distinguished group of stakeholders to discuss one of the most pressing challenges of our time, water. As we heard many times already, most essential public good and resource for all of our lives, yet its reliability is cracking under the pressure of climate change. I call it a climate threat and increasing demand. Allow me a personal reflection, just a very brief one, to say that I grew up in Cyprus, an eastern Mediterranean island, in a farming family, and for many years, I remember as a child the stories of my grandfather and my father talking about the long droughts or the extreme flooding that was affecting their life and their work. Later, as a consumer, I still remember, and it still is sometimes happening in Cyprus, remember to have water once or twice a week because of the lack of rain in my island. The significance of agriculture diminished maybe over the decades since my father as a contribution to GDP, but it didn't diminish in a significant part of our lives. I mean, personally, I cannot imagine myself visiting Kazakhstan or the neighboring countries and not to enjoy the same quality of vegetables and fruits. Agriculture and the bioeconomy are essential sectors and that underpin the sustainability and resilience of our economies. Recognize the importance of the sector and criticality of an EU-level response to the challenges it faces. The European Investment Bank, the EU Bank, identified the support to agriculture and bioeconomy as one of its strategic priorities. The sector will remain a priority for EIB lending inside and outside the EU for both individual and intermediate public and private sector operations. Our strategic objectives in financing the agriculture sector include enhancing food security, providing access to finance to small farmers and agro-food SMEs, fostering innovation and promoting sustainable agriculture practices, supporting solutions to increase climate resilience, and supporting rural development to improve the livelihoods of farmers and rural communities through investments in the infrastructure. Access to finance is one of the many obstacles to the integration of farmers, particularly smallholders, into value chains and to economic growth driven by a dynamic agriculture sector. These obstacles are all the more significant for agricultural activities linked to climate action and environmental sustainability, for which the financial sector's interest is currently limited. We are working to change this. Risk-sharing mechanisms such as guarantees are deployed to support local financial institutions in extending credit to smallholder farmers in agri-SMEs sector. I can give you an example with a project of which we are working here in Kazakhstan. We are partnering with Agrarian Credit Corporation, JSC, to enable small and medium-sized farmers and enterprises in Kazakhstan's agriculture sector to invest in green technologies, renewable energy, sustainable practices. A key aspect of this is the part of the funds will be allocated for investments in climate action and environmental sustainability. By prioritizing climate action, this will keep Kazakhstan transition to a low-carbon economy, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and enhance environmental stewardships, underlying the EIB's commitment to advancing the EU's sustainable development goals. The EIB is a key player in using blended finance to catalyze private sector investment in agriculture, particularly in emerging and fragile contexts where risk is a major barrier. Blended finance allows EIB to crowd in capital by combining concessional resources like EU grants, with commercial lending, lowering and the overall risk for investors and making agri-food projects more bankable. EIB also partners with Food and Agriculture Organization, Investment Center to implement technical assistance to identify and prepare climate resilience and risk mitigation projects in sub-Saharan Africa that will focus on food security and rural development. This approach would be developed further and used as a model of cooperation. In concluding, let me say that though our partnership with FAO, IFAD, and WFP it strengthens our investment readiness possibility and develop pipeline projects, and we try to ensure that technical support aligns with financial instruments.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Kakouris. And thank you for bringing not only the institutional EIB perspective, but also your personal touch, your personal family touch, and also about our relationship between FAO and EIB, but also important between Kazakhstan and your operations in Kazakhstan, and how we can work together. Let me now turn to Mrs. Wiebke Schlömer and IFC. IFC brings private sector investments and innovation to the forefront of the development. Mrs. Schlömer, engaging private sector in sustainable agriculture and water use is critical. How do you see the role of private sector in implementing water projects, and how public-private partnerships can promote that as well? Over to you.
Thank you very much, and let me say how delighted I am to be back in Astana at the forum here, which is really a key event. Let me share probably three things. First, I do want to reiterate, because I think it's so important, that water is critical. And it's critical for not only for people to sustain lives, for human development, for economic growth, but ultimately, and I just want to put this explicitly, also for sustaining jobs and developing jobs, which going back is, I think, something that's key for people. And as IFC, and you know, we're part of the World Bank Group, we work actually very closely as a World Bank Group, bringing in public and private sector expertise that we have in developing the broader sort of water sector. What we see in Central Asia, and I think especially also in Kazakhstan, is that investment needs are huge, and we see a huge role for the private sector to come in. We've prepared, together as the World Bank Group, a roadmap in Kazakhstan to develop the water and sanitation sector. And this has identified a number of opportunities for PPPs. And you've mentioned this, and I think we're very familiar by now with the term PPP. We've seen them in a number of infrastructure sectors. We do not yet see them as much as I think it's possible in the broader water sector. So that's the different subsectors of water. Of course, it can be more complicated with water, as we've heard, given the type of public good and resource it is. But let me say that the opportunity is huge. There is what the private sector can bring is, apart from capital, is expertise, is experience, it's efficiency, it's innovation. There is really a lot. And as IFC, and that together with the colleagues from the World Bank and also the other IFIs, we have a lot of experience in structuring and preparing PPPs, and that's what I would say is our focus now going forward. Let me add one sort of concrete, also more personal example. Last year, I visited Aktau in Kazakhstan. I actually went in the first place because I wanted to explore more the transport route through the country. But as we were preparing and as we visited, it was very clear that water scarcity is actually equally an important topic, if not more. So we refocused and have now been developing a plan or a suggestion for a PPP project in Actau. So just to say, I think this is how opportunities can become very real, and we stand ready to take this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ms. Schlemmer. And thank you for bringing this issue of PPP and also practical solutions to it. It's also important to bring ideas to action. And thank you very much for exemplifying that. Let me move ahead, and I'd like to now turn to Mr. Hussein Özhan, EBRD. EBRD has been a key player in infrastructure and climate financing across Central Asia. Mr. Özhan, EBRD has a strong track record in supporting infrastructure and sustainable development across Central Asia. In your view, how can investments in water infrastructure, especially irrigation modernization, be better targeted to support agricultural productivity and resilience? And what innovative financing models are emerging and could be applied to support farmers and rural communities in this transition?
Thank you very much. I'd like to also start with how honored I am, and it's a privilege for me to be here presenting today and joining yet another Astana International Forum. As it was indicated, due to the floods last year, this forum was postponed. So I think it is a stark example of the importance of water. Also, it is a privilege to be next to such distinguished guests, partners in crime, I would say. We have been co-financing and working together a number of projects in the region. So it is also very difficult for me to add value after the two interventions. Particularly, I want to also indicate that Mr. Mansouri has put together on a number of items. So I'll try to say something that would add a little bit of value. So how I want to respond to this question is we want to look at it from the financing structures available by the IFIs or the commercial banks or MDBs. And secondly, I want to touch upon a little bit on the policy dialogue, engagement, and reform. But let me just, recap Central Asia's characteristics in the water sector. So it was indicated, but arid, semi-arid climate, altered precipitation. It has increasing temperatures and glacier melting, which is varying water availability significantly. Transboundary rivers such as Amu Darya and Sir Darya, with differing distribution, hydropower development and irrigation rights. I think one of the things I'd like to mention is the two big projects that was mentioned that is in the region on the hydro side. RLC, I don't have to talk about what has happened and where it is now. Outdated infrastructure, I think this is going to be also quite important. And it was pointed out that the majority of the infrastructure is pre-1980. And also a number of countries heavily reliant on, particularly and solely on grant financing for the investments, and grant funding at the moment, due to what's happening in the world, is becoming scarcer and scarcer. So there is on one side, so in order to actually move forward, it's a complex structure. So on one side, there is the demand of water, and on the other side, there's the supply of water. On the supply side, we have limited water resources, which is further reducing. Sustainability is a question, and availability is also reducing. On the demand side, we have more and more demand, obviously due to growth, GDP growth particularly, and also per capita consumption is increasing as well. So let's look at the supply side. So we need to mainly look at the following: conventional and non-conventional drinking water systems, particularly important for the cities. Centralized wastewater networks and treatment, it's on the infrastructure side, particularly also important. The management of safe disposal of wastewaters, which is related to this, and primary irrigation infrastructure, which was indicated the vast majority of the water is actually used there. Any efficiency gains is going to significantly help. So food, water, and energy nexus is very important here. So flood management infrastructure, glacier melting, dams and reservoirs, investments of sustainable supply is also key. So across these areas, projects need to be identified, studied well, and financed to increase the resilience with good governance through capacity building at the governmental and implementation body level. Digitalization and optimization is obviously a need that needs to be taken forward. So a few parameters we can consider to ensure better deployment of these investments and related financing. Availability of grant resources. We are ever so grateful for all of the grant providers. I see EU, I have to mention it, as our largest donor, as well as bilateral donors, and the countries like Kazakhstan. So this will impact the affordability of the projects with support on the technical cooperation and assistance side, as well as the concessionality side. Second, introduction of tariff systems on a cost-based recovery structures. This is particularly important to ensure the bankability and increase the role of private sector, which was indicated over by Wipke, to introduce also efficiency and expertise of the private sector. Simple, from the most simple to the most complicated, management contracts on one side. It can go all the way to design, build, operate, finance, and maintain contracts. And ultimately, it can go to privatization as well. So on the demand side, we have network-related investments, including installation of meters. Secondly, support the users, particularly on individual farmers. We have to use the financial sector as a conduit for this. MSMEs to invest in more sustainable technologies and digital solutions to ensure more efficient water usage. Since I'm out of my time, I will stop here. If you have more time or questions and answers, I can continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Özhan. And thank you for bringing this perspective of demand and supply and also solutions. Very interesting. Thank you. Thank you very much. You know, I have prepared a couple of additional questions about examples of our joint work, about examples of investments, about successes to share. But unfortunately, we ran out of time. And I would like to encourage to continue our discussions in any formal settings on the sides of the forum and in our bilateral meetings. And I'd like to really explore our last minute by saying a few last words. I'd like to thank all of our distinguished panelists for their powerful insights, institutional and personal, but also forward-looking perspective. One key message resonates through every intervention today. Water security is not just about infrastructure or finance. It's about people. And we believe that our shared expertise and knowledge combined with your investment can create lasting impact. Together we can make the impossible possible. Together we can transform water from a source of tension into a source of opportunity and peace. And platforms like Astana International Forum, with its vision of connecting minds, shaping the future, are essential. Thank you very much, dear panelists, my dear colleagues, also colleagues who provided opening remarks. Thanks a lot from all our audience and from the forum, and wishing a lot of success to everyone. May I invite you for a round of applause for our panelists.
Уважаемые гости форума, можете, пожалуйста, пофотографироваться еще пару минут, потом мы будем готовиться к следующей сессии. Спасибо большое.
Welcome, everyone. Very pleased to be here, partnering at this event and spending the next half hour talking about the very broad issue of migration, but it just doesn't leave the headlines, which is interesting, isn't it? Over recent years, the way we've talked about it has changed quite rapidly. We've got Amy Pope here, you'll know from the International Organization for Migration. Amy, just explain what the organization is. A lot of people think it's a UN organization. It's not exactly, is it?
Well, we're UN affiliated. So in 2016, we joined the UN family, although we still retain our own constitution and membership. So it's slightly different.
Okay. I looked at one of your reports and it had this very stark figure saying since 2014, more than 52,000 people have died whilst trying to escape crisis-affected countries. And this really speaks to a lot of your work, doesn't it? I mean, these people don't want to go.
Yeah. And what we're seeing is that the current international architecture isn't really built for the reasons why people leave today. So, for example, last year we saw more people who were displaced by the impacts of climate than by conflict. You look in a place, this region in particular is very impacted by climate change. We see people impacted by drought, by melting glaciers, by water scarcity. And the bottom line is if you don't have a safe place to live or if you can't farm your fields, you're going to move. That's just what people do. But the system that has been built since World War II isn't really available to help support those communities. And so we see more and more people flee, more and more people rely on smugglers, more and more people use irregular migration routes than ever before.
And you've got a quote here saying migration should be a choice, not a necessity, because it has got this brand of just being horror, but actually migration is good as well, and we forget that.
Yeah. In fact, the World Bank just a year ago did this really comprehensive report that highlighted how, on balance, over the years, migration has been a tremendous force for development. More communities are better off, more individuals are better off as a result of migration. It makes sense because people are migrating to where they can find job opportunities, they learn skills, they send money back home, and for many people who go home after having been a migrant, they bring that expertise back into their economies, and that leads to more development.
Yeah, and people see it as a humanitarian issue, but it's interesting that you've talked a lot about how migrants are often left out of any sort of humanitarian planning, which is true when you think about it and quite extraordinary.
I've seen it around the world. For example, I was in Lebanon shortly after there had been bombing in southern Lebanon. Many people, as we know, fled. The migrants were often left behind, nowhere to go. And so with the support of the Catholic Church, amongst others, IOM was there to help the migrants find a safe place to sleep while their employers had left. In some cases, we had to help migrants get back home to where they'd come from.
So that's where you see your role. Often you get dragged into these situations because the other organizations aren't dealing with it.
And that's why we exist, right? So we were created after World War II to help the millions of people who'd been displaced by the war find safety. In some cases, go back home if they could go back home. In other cases, find a new place to live. That work we have continued over the years, but the way it looks has evolved quite a bit. My goal, though, is increasingly to move away from migration as an emergency response to something that can be more planned, more strategic, and something that can drive development as opposed to just reacting. And that's part of why we're here at this forum. In this region in particular, there are large numbers of people who are migrating for work opportunities. There's a need for migrants, and we're seeing migrants come from places like Bangladesh or India or Pakistan. And we're seeing opportunities for people to migrate elsewhere in the world, get job opportunities, get training, and bring that back home.
So you're, in effect, representing migrants at these high-level events because you can, and you're just reminding everyone that don't forget the migrants. Is that what you often find yourself?
Not just don't forget the migrants, but really build migration into your development plans.
Yeah.
If you are a country that is being impacted by drought, don't wait until drought is displacing entire communities
plan
until
for it.
you act.
I want to ask about, because you're relatively recent in your post, aren't you? You used to be in the Biden administration, I think I'm right in saying. Also with Obama?
I worked for both presidents, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
You've talked about bringing fresh ideas and a fresh perspective as a leader, which is, dare I say, what every leader says.
Oh, come on.
So what does it mean?
Mine are really fresh. So, I think, first and foremost, I'm not of the UN system, and I'm coming from a country that was a major, major donor to the United Nations system. And I think when you come as a donor, you often expect results. You want to see that taxpayer money is leading to change. Part of my perspective is how do we be as practical as possible, as outcome-driven as possible? Let's not argue about the placement of commas. Let's figure out how we can have a more of an impact for people who need us. I also have spent time working in the private sector, and frankly, that was probably the best training I got in terms of how you manage a budget. And if you have to bill your time, what do you have to show for it? I feel in my role as the head of this organization that we have an obligation to our member states and to their taxpayers to show that we are using the money effectively and that we are not using it to have lots of internal conversations about what this could look like, but demonstrating what good looks like on the ground.
By going there, because you've traveled an extraordinary amount.
I travel because that's where the work is. The work is not in Geneva,
yeah.
which is a lovely place to live, but we don't have a lot of people displaced living in Geneva, right? So getting out to Haiti, getting out to Congo, getting out to Gaza or Ukraine or Afghanistan, that's where we can make a difference. Coming to places like this, meeting with the leaders of these countries, that's how we shape our work.
I haven't seen you dancing here.
We'll get there.
This is because Amy's known for dancing with migrants, right?
Yeah.
But this is part of the message.
Yes, it's part of the message is that migration doesn't have to be something that is horrible. It does not have to be a negative. Yes, a lot of people I'm meeting them at the worst moment of their life where they've often lost everything and they're living in a strange country and they don't know what their future will look like. But they're still people, and they're making decisions based on the best available options for them. For me, being able to meet people as people, no matter what circumstance they happen to be in, is part of the message.
And you've talked about diversity. I mean, working with migrants is, by definition, isn't it, diverse? But your leadership team is mostly women. I think you're the first woman in your job.
Yeah.
Is that intentional, or is that just how you wrapped yourself with the people that had the expertise?
You know, it's not intentional, although I have to say it's been quite effective. And, you know, it's a group of people who are very committed to getting things done. There's not a lot of ego. It's just about output. And that's very refreshing because you'll know if you work in high levels of government or certainly high levels of the UN, oftentimes ego will get in the way of outcome. So we have a fantastic team. I'm pleased to say it's representing all parts of the world. I do have two men on my leadership team who provide tremendous insight and expertise, and we are focused on finding ways to work together so that we deliver.
What did you make of the President of North Macedonia's comment about there still not being a female leader of the UN?
What I loved most was her comment basically along the lines of, when you have powerful men with weapons, you need powerful women with wisdom, right?
Yeah.
So there's something to be said about having balance. Now,
There's sometimes an argument, isn't there, to say it's gone on for too long. I don't want to get into the whole positive discrimination debate, but you know, the idea is that over time, the leadership does reflect nations, so it should reflect, be more diverse than that, presumably.
I think, especially because I work in migration, I think it's valuable to have different perspectives around the table. I want the smartest people I can find. I want the hardest working people I can find. But I also want people who are going to challenge my assumptions. And I want people who are going to bring to the table a different perspective. Otherwise, it's very dangerous. You end up just reinforcing the same concepts over and over. And I don't think that that works, especially with the challenges we're facing globally. So I have been lucky to have tremendous people on my team, but I have put in place new ways of assessing talent, right? I have very competitive processes now to hire all our chiefs of mission, and that's not the way it's always been done. But I think when we're dealing with issues of conflict and climate and poverty and inequality, I need the smartest people around the table to help make those decisions.
And also, you do have fresh challenges now, because I know people in your position hate talking about politics, but you've been forced into politics because the issue you work on is effectively the flagship policy for most hard right parties in Europe, obviously what's happened in America as well. How are you dealing with that?
So my goal is as much as possible to stay out of the political and focus on the practical. You can't always do it, right? But part of it is identifying the partners who want to see safe, legal migration because it's in their interest. So that means partnering with the private sector. In many cases, the private sector will make decisions about where to locate new business based on what their workforce will look like. And migration is a key piece of that conversation. It also means engaging with mayors and local community actors. You speak to a mayor in a city like Milan, and you will hear they need migrants. It also is figuring out where our partners are and not assuming that someone's political party will dictate whether or not they're going to be an effective partner. Prime Minister Meloni is going to be here later tonight, and she has been really innovative in finding ways to deal with the demographic challenges they have in Italy by creating labor mobility pathways for people to come and work in Italy. You wouldn't think that based on her party's, her party affiliation, but she's very practical and she's focused on what's the best for her country. And so finding those partnerships is critical. Again, it's why coming to a region like Central Asia is critical, because here you see the movement of people in the region, you see incoming migrants, you see people moving abroad, and we are finding that the leaders here are much more pragmatic about finding a way forward.
On the political side, there are things that certain leaders do which upset people you work with, and you have to deal with that. And I'm going to bring up this example because this is something that we reported on, which is the South African farmers, who are the only white South African farmers, are the only ones that are currently allowed asylum in America. And then you speak to our correspondents in South Africa, and they say there is no genocide here, and how actually black people suffer from the death rate more than any white person. Anyway, it's a very complicated, horrible debate. But how do you reassure people that you're doing your work when you have situations like that, which clashes for so many people?
On the question of South Africa, the first question for us is, what is the position of the South African government? We are a member state organization. We cannot go into a country and say, we're going to do something you oppose. It's part of our responsibility as a UN-affiliated organization to respect the territorial integrity of any government. So in the case of South Africa, we were not in a position to work with the US in terms of moving people out of South Africa because, very straightforwardly, the South African government was not supportive of it. So again, that just brings it down to a very practical level. We are apolitical, we are humanitarian actors, so our job is to provide support to whomever needs it, but it doesn't give us license to operate somewhere where we don't have the okay of the government. It also means, though, that we have to, this on an issue that is so political, it is finding ways to provide very practical advice and support to our partners. We don't set the immigration policies of governments. Every government has the right to set its own policy. But we do have a lot of experience and expertise dealing with the issue, and where we can provide capacity or understanding or expertise or data, that's where we can add value.
What about this new idea, for most people, I'm sure it's happened in history, but voluntary deportation? I mean, how do you even understand that?
So we as an organization are not involved in forced deportations. But we do feel a responsibility wherever migrants might be stranded, wherever people may be coming home and not have resources, wherever people may want to go home and not have resources, we are there to help them get home. And we've done that, as I said, since our founding after World War II. We've done that here in Europe for migrants who are in European countries. They don't have status, they can't stay, and so we help them go home safely, legally, with dignity. And then as much as possible, once they come home, help them find opportunities so that they can find some stability and safety. So in the case of the United States, it's the same calculation. If there are people who want to go home and we can help them go home, we can treat them humanely and with dignity. From our perspective, that's consistent with our responsibility. We, as I said, stay out of the political conversations and see our first obligation as to supporting migrants, our member states, so that we can find safe and effective solutions.
I think before we go, we should mention Gaza, because people look to that thinking, it could end up being a massive refugee crisis. How do you prepare for something like that?
So I had the chance to go into Gaza in February. It was during the ceasefire. And I saw and heard from many people on the ground. Their number one concern at that point was shelter. Can you help us set up tents? Can you help us find more stable shelter? IOM is what we call a cluster lead. We are one of the leading organizations in providing shelter for communities who have been displaced, first and foremost inside their own country. And we have 40,000 tents for the people of Gaza that are in warehouses in Jordan. We'd like to get those in, right? During the ceasefire, we were able to provide support. We were able to work with partners to be part of that life-saving assistance. We'd like to do more of it. And frankly, the people of Gaza are desperately in need of that kind of humanitarian support.
Okay. Amy Pope, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.